Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 102. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Sunday night, Steelers Nation. Dave, we had said on the Friday show we'd only do a show Sunday, Monday if some big news broke, probably quarterback related. Big news broke so far as of 10 o'clock Sunday night. It was not quarterback related. DK Metcalf is a Pittsburgh Steeler, traded in a stunning deal from Seattle to Pittsburgh and signing when it becomes official at least, but signing a 5-year, $150 million contract. So I think it was worthy of an emergency episode of the podcast, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. And this happened, well over an hour ago, waiting to see if anything else, broke Steelers related to get to this. All I can say is wow, and good for Omar Khan. And, we can finally, this is kind of another, we said if they went out and did a deal like this, that this would be stop the presses type of stuff. Go out there and not only make a deal, but give, for a wide receiver, big name wide receiver, but turn around and give them, a huge money extension like that as well, too. So we've talked a lot about precedents that this team has had, and man, really looking forward to seeing this off season if they would be less predictable and break some of these precedents and actually do something that was made a solid effort for putting together a much better product on the field than they've had last couple seasons. And so far, look, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be yet. Maybe that'll happen during this podcast. But the fact that they went out there and traded for a stud, and make no mistake about it, this is a stud wide receiver. This is an accomplished wide receiver, still young overall, still got a lot of mileage on him, to go out there and trade a second-round pick for a guy like DK Metcalf and then turn around and give him an extension that reportedly will have a new money average of $33 million, which, assuming that happens right after he enters the door after the start of the new league year, and assuming a TJ Watt extension does not happen prior to that, he's going to be the highest paid player on this roster until they get TJ Watt done. So no matter, people have been complaining, saying, we know it's not even the start of the new league year yet. The tampering period isn't here yet. People getting aggravated hearing all this news around the NFL and things happening. But look, we said they got to do something at wide receiver. They've got to make some splashes there at wide receiver, and they've done that now. So that's one less thing for us to talk about when it comes to precedents and things of that nature. They've done it once now, Alex. So moving forward, however long we do this thing, it means they can do it again. But this is huge news, and good for them for getting this done, especially on the heels of there being some of those reports about Metcalf wanting to play in warmer territory and contender and yada yada. It sounds like a few of those have been debunked, but this is big news.
I think the reporting was the climate was debunked, but he wanted to play for a contender, and he apparently views Pittsburgh as a contender. Now, he also got the contract he was seeking, which was about $30 million per season, and so that certainly goes a long way to facilitate a deal to the wintry climate of Pittsburgh. But to recap, just to set the stage, this trade will officially process Wednesday, Dave, correct?
Right, after the
new league year begins?
Yeah, after the start of the new league year, it'll be announced officially.
So that'll officially announced by both teams. But assuming all goes well, DK Metcalf will be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2025 and beyond. The compensation reportedly is Pittsburgh is sending a second-round pick and one of their seventh-round picks in 2025, this April's draft, in exchange for Metcalf. and a Seattle 6th-round pick in 2025. We don't know exactly which of the 2 7th-rounders Pittsburgh has is going to Seattle. Seattle also, I think, will have 2 6th-round picks once the comp picks are announced, probably on Monday, and so we're not quite sure on the exact deal in that sense of it all. But no one really cares about the 6th, 7th-round pick swaps right now. It's a second rounder for Metcalf, essentially, in that massive contract to get him to come to Pittsburgh. So as you said, credit to Pittsburgh. They called receiver priority. Those were Omar Khan's exact words. They made that move. They talked about changes. They were ridiculed in a sense for lack of changes, even by ourselves and myself jokingly from time to time. They've made a big move. They've gone all in. They struck out last year on Ayuk and couldn't pull off a Devontae Adams deal, and Christian Kirk got hurt midseason. They got this one done. I know Metcalf had to have had a huge market for his services, a 27-year-old alpha type of receiver in his prime, even knowing the contract it would take to acquire him. They got this deal done. And so credit to the Steelers front office.
Yeah, and they got this done even before the tampering period started as well, too. So, kudos to them. And as far as the financials go, we don't know the cross T's and the dotted I's yet, but we do have this to work from Tom Pelissero. And DK Metcalf had 1 year left on his contract at a little more than $18 million. It sounds like 4 years, $132 million extension on that. So that new money average would be $33 million, it sounds like, per year, which as things sits right now, I think that would make him the 3rd highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Now, there's more deals coming this offseason. He'll get pushed down the list a little bit there. But I mean, this is monumental when it comes to the Steelers. Not only trading for a guy outside the organization, but a wide receiver at that, and then turning around and paying that wide receiver top 5 money at the time there. We'll have to see what the full language and the guarantee works out, and the cash flow and all like that. But I mean, this thing should total out at probably a little bit more than 150 million for the total of the 5 years overall, and it should come out with a new money average of around 33 million per year. I'm guessing that the first year money, 2025 money with signing bonus and everything, will probably be 33, 35, 36 million, something like that. But once again, we had said that this team's got a lot of cash to play with this offseason, right? Cap space too. And even those things are two different things. They both line up for this team making a lot of doing a lot of things, spending some money this offseason. So now it starts with DK Metcalf. The cap number right now as he enters the door will be a little bit more than 18 million, but I suspect that will drop the moment that he signs his contract extension with the Steelers. So you give up a second. We had been thinking, what would they do with that second anyway? Possibly a wide receiver, possibly a cornerback, something along those lines. Well, now you don't have to worry about that. You went out there and you got a top-notch wide receiver in the league. I think this almost assures now that this team will go defensive line in the first round. Obviously, they could go other directions there, but they needed to make this wide receiver room better, and they have started the process of doing that with DK Metcalf. And there is a reasonable, logical question to ask immediately after this deal. And before we do that, though, just thoughts on DK Metcalf, the receiver, Alex.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. And you're right, there are still so many unanswered questions on the other side of this Metcalf deal, but we should talk about the player himself. And he's 27, prime of his career, your typical built in a lap, height, weight, speed kind of a guy. He's a guy that's going to be able to take the top off a defense. He can be a really good yak threat post catch. I mean, if George Pickens stays, and that's one of the questions that we'll have to answer and wait and see about, and you have Metcalf and Pickens on the outside, you can't double both of those guys, but you're going to see teams have to play more two high shells to try to take away those vertical threats. It's going to soften up things for the run game if the O-line can develop, if they can Pittsburgh can add a playmaking, explosive type of running back, it's going to really unlock this offense in a lot of different ways. And so Metcalf is really that, like I said earlier, alpha type of receiver that's going to be big, physical, can do anything your offense asks of him, and can really be scheme independent, because we've seen Arthur Smith's offense not always, create ways to get guys open, but you have a guy like Metcalf that can create his own way to get open. And so I'm certainly going to do a deep dive into Metcalf here starting later tonight, but he is that alpha height, weight, speed receiver that can win in virtually any way. And it's going to be a headache for defenses to try to stop him, especially if Pickens is still on the other side.
Absolutely. You got a guy that can work in the short area. You got a guy that can work in the middle area of the field. You got a guy that can work deep, both down both sides and in the middle of the field too. Last year he had of targets of 20 or more air yards last season. It depends on which. If you use SIS or use PFF, PFF has him down for 16 receptions first in the NFL. I think SIS had him down for 15 near the top of the league in receptions of more than 20 or more air yards down the field. 5 touchdowns. How many? I think he only had 5 touchdowns last year, didn't he? And all 5 of them were 20 plus air yards down the field. A couple of those were middle of the field in the end zone. Boy, wouldn't it be great to see those? And then a couple of them down the sidelines. I think one of those he was wide open, just great separation on in that. But look, Geno Smith obviously had a great, a better year last year and played a part in making sure he got the football and all like that. But this is a guy that can still stretch the field, very physical. As you said, you can independently scheme him up if you need to. Obviously, and we'll get to this in a minute. If George Pickens is there, and as you said, good luck trying to not run a too high shell or with both those guys on the field, because somebody's going to get you within that situation there. We'll see if they keep these two together, but I mean this guy's a monster. There's no other way to talk about DK Metcalf, Planet Theory type guy, obviously, and still has that speed. You can do a lot with him. Physical, a little bit too physical maybe at times. He had quite a few penalties last year, so he's got to get, he is an alpha male. He takes some things personally on the field and gets himself some penalties and all like that. So they'll have to get the penalties under control with him. Probably have to. You got a guy that's gonna say what he feels on the field as well too. Probably chirp a little bit here and there, give you some little bit extra things to write about off the field, or after the games and all like that. But I mean, this is a top wide receiver in the league, so you got to take your hat off and hand it to Omar Khan for going out and getting a guy like DK Metcalf.
He's a playmaker, and Pittsburgh said they need playmakers, and it was obvious they need playmakers. And while I thought there were other veteran receivers that Pittsburgh could have pursued as good number 2 types, none of them were close to the caliber of DK Metcalf. None of them, all the others, I should say, had questions about their age, their health. Do they truly move the needle? All the names we've talked about, from Chris Godwin to Amari Cooper to Darius Slayton, they all came with some strings attached and some buts, and Metcalf really does not. Now, as you said, again, that big personality, if he's in that same locker room as George Pickens, how do you feed everybody the football, keep everyone happy for what should still be a pretty run-oriented type of offense? But I really compare this. My first thought to try to find a comparison point for Pittsburgh is whenever A.J. Brown was in Tennessee with Arthur Smith, his first 2 years, his rookie and sophomore season, 2019 and 2020, and 1,000-yard seasons both years, made the Pro Bowl, I think, his second year, had 19 total touchdowns, and Metcalf is like that A.J. Brown, just that rare physical specimen that can win, as you said, at all 3 levels. And so there's a real precedent for Smith knowing how to utilize a guy like Metcalf. And even in that first year, you had Metcalf and Corey Davis have really good seasons. So we have in moments seen two receivers get involved and put up numbers. And it's not like Metcalf and Pickens are big volume guys. They're more that Z-type receiver. They're not going to catch 110 balls. They're going to catch 70, 80 footballs, and that's okay. They can both make it work. So, yeah, this is the bell of the ball. This is the number one guy that was available, even better fit because of the age than a Devontae Adams, who signed with the Rams today, and Pittsburgh lands Metcalf.
Yeah, like we said, hoping that this team had a stop the presses type move and broke precedent with some of these things, and now they've done that. So I'm interested to see how they move forward from here into the offseason now, and obviously interested to see who the quarterback will be.
Exactly. And I give, again, credit to Omar Khan for making this deal. Didn't think they would go this top shelf, just being able to win out with all the other presumed competition there was for Metcalf. Teams like the Chargers and maybe some other teams were in the mix. I think even the Texans were still in the mix, even though they had acquired Christian Kirk. And I thought it had to be quarterback first because I just thought it'd be tough to, especially sign a free agent or verbally agree to a deal with a free agent without the quarterback set into place. But obviously, with Metcalf, the trade, getting him the contract that he wanted, really played a factor. And so, while the quarterback situation will hopefully be settled here within the next, I don't know, 12, 14, 24 hours or so, for Pittsburgh to be able to land that is certainly notable and a credit to Omar Khan. So just to kind of jump to the topic, since you mentioned it, Dave, who will be throwing to DK Metcalf? Does this increase the odds of his former teammate Russell Wilson returning and re-signing with Pittsburgh to throw to Metcalf in 2025?
Who knows? But that's the first thing that ran through my mind is, I mean, those two obviously have a good relationship together, playing all those years in Seattle together. What something about the Wilson's wife introduced DK to his wife or something along those lines.
Something like that.
I don't want to go too deep into this thing here because I don't know the full specifics. I just saw the article on it there, but there's a relationship there, obviously, and how there could there not be after all those years they spent together in Seattle together. So they definitely know each other, and it's easy to connect the dots when it comes to those two. And we'll just have to wait and see if indeed that's going to happen. Now, there's a lot of rumblings out there that the Steelers, a plan is to be Justin Fields, and the name of Sam Darnold's been tossed around even more the last several days, especially since Geno Smith was sent off to the Raiders and all those kind of things there. So I don't know. It would make sense if it was Russell Wilson because of the relationship there and kind of so-called getting the band back together there. So we'll see. I don't know which way it's going to go, and I'm not convinced that the media knows still at this point. At least at the time we're recording this, which is 10:15 Eastern time.
Right. It feels like the one thing we can say that we know is that no one really knows for sure. And I don't know. This thing could go in really not a million, probably three different ways: Russ, Fields, or Sam Darnold. Does the Metcalf trade impact Darnold's chances of going to Seattle? I don't really think so because Metcalf's been on the block for a couple of days. That's kind of already been known. And once Geno Smith got traded to the Raiders, that really opened up the talk and the door for Darnold to come to Seattle. Obviously, Russell Wilson has a strong connection. It's logical to believe that he would be the quarterback, but I don't want to assume that either just because of that connection alone. If the Metcalf trade has shown us anything, Pittsburgh can certainly surprise and what we think and expect. And I asked you that question. It was more about pending free agents, but what would be that big surprise of the offseason? And right now it's going to be DK Metcalf. The Fields to Jets talk has really ramped up. Some of the reporting would indicate that Pittsburgh is at least creating contingency plans for if they lose Justin Fields to the New York Jets. That's where the report of them offering Sam Darnold comes in. Will that happen? Of course, would Darnold be enticed by the chance to throw to DK and potentially George Pickens if he stays in Pittsburgh? So again, this thing can go in a million ways. I have no idea which way it's going to go. I'm less optimistic Fields will resign than I was a couple days ago based on reporting. But again, to use the Omar Khan phrase, all options seem to be on the table.
All right, and Jerry Dulac, right before we got on this, take it for what it's worth, claims that the Metcalf trade has nothing to do with Russell Wilson. So we'll see how the rest of this plays out. The guy that's had the coolest talk or cooled off talk about him the most in the last, I don't know, 48 hours is Russell Wilson, though, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's really been no reporting about Russ. He's been connected to the Giants some. That's been the one other team that's been mentioned in addition to potential re-signing and return to Pittsburgh. But again, we're going to let those pieces fall into place. It sounds like, and again, I want to be careful not assuming things, but we won't know until after the legal tampering period begins Monday at noon. I guess Fields wants to test his market. That reporting has been very consistent, wants to see exactly what's out there from the Jets and potentially anybody else and go from there. So hopefully these dominoes will start to fall pretty quickly beginning Monday at noon, but we're all in wait and see mode.
I don't know. Never say never. This this afternoon has moved very, very quick.
Yeah.
With news. So I don't know. Maybe at 30 minutes after we get off this podcast, maybe news will break about who will be the Steelers quarterback next year. But
now, if it was Darnold, we couldn't know that until after the legal tampering period, right? Because you can't announce that before the legal tampering period begins.
Right. But there's a lot of legal tampering going on right now.
Oh yeah, it doesn't stop teams from talking, but no one wants to let that leak out because the NFL will then investigate.
Right. So as we wait for that, my mind couldn't help but wonder if indeed it does wind up being Russell Wilson, and really even if it doesn't, would this team consider bringing Tyler Lockett in, to help fortify that room if they could get him at a good price?
I think, as you said in our chat, get the band back together, which, sure, I mean, I understand that, the rationale behind, but I just don't know for sure. And I don't want to, I discounted Darnold, and maybe shame on me for that, but he's on the table too. If they're going to make a run for DK Metcalf, what stops them from making a run at Sam Darnold?
Right. Exactly. Now, how much does Darnold move the needle more than, say, bringing back, either Fields or Russell Wilson, in your opinion?
I mean, I think it's a sizable jump forward in the sense of who's the best quarterback on the market. I think Darnold was clearly the guy. My concern with Darnold had been, and I mentioned this on a recent episode, was the infrastructure to give Darnold the environment to thrive in Pittsburgh the way that he thrived in Minnesota. The quarterback guru coach, the closed indoor stadium, the receiving talent, but Pittsburgh has at least solved the receiving talent portion by bringing in a guy like DK Metcalf that makes any quarterback look better. So it warms me up to the idea a little bit more, although I'd still be hesitant to make sure that Pittsburgh had really the foundation in place for Darnold to thrive, but we'll cross that bridge if we come to it tomorrow.
Right. All right. Now kind of the other byproduct conversation, and it's a reasonable, like it or not, if you listen to this, it's a reasonable question to ask. And Daniel Jeremiah was one of the first of the major media guys to ask this on Twitter. What happens with George Pickens? Do the Steelers maybe try to deal him? And look, as is right now, the way this, you needed another guy, another big name wide receiver in that room. Now you got it. Now, if you were to immediately, without adding anybody else, send George Pickens off tonight via trade, not having anybody else under contract, it feels like, well, what did you really do? You're back down to one big name receiver there. Now, I think where the question more could be asked about the potential future of George Pickens this offseason is what if they go out there and sign a Tyler Lockett, a Darius Slayton, somebody that could complement a guy like DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin III and your other young wide receiver in Roman Wilson there. If we see them make another immediate move, in this next 48, 72, whatever hours you want to attach to that, then I think it becomes a reasonable question to ask. Well, what are they doing here? What's maybe the plan with George Pickens? But until they do something like that, it's something to ponder, but I don't think you're going to do that until you have somebody else in that room.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair, and you're right. You don't want to ship Metcalf in and then Pickens out, and then you're kind of in the same spot where you have that one big play number one, but not anything else to complement it, and you're in that same position you were with Pickens a year ago from an on-field lack of overall playmakers, lack of depth at receiver that Pittsburgh ran into. So here's my thought overall, Dave. Do I want to keep George Pickens for 2024? Yes, I do, because you have Pickens, you have Metcalf. You want this offense to truly be a threat across the board where teams can't just focus on one guy. Because even if you sign, say a Tyler Lockett, then all that attention rolls to Metcalf, and you're now relying on a 32-year-old declining Lockett to really step up and make plays or some equivalent type of receiver. If you have a Pickens, you have 1A and 1A. It's not 1A and 1B. You have those two, again, alpha type of big play receivers. To me, the question is, what is George Pickens' reaction to this? He sees this team trade for DK Metcalf, really would be considered probably the de facto number one receiver in this offense, getting $30 million per season. Does Pickens say, I can read the writing on the wall. You're moving forward with DK as the guy, playing him, paying him as such. I now want out. That to me is the potential path for Pickens to exit. And if he does ask for that, does he get it? Especially seeing that DK Metcalf asked for a trade, got a trade, got paid. Debo Samuel asked for a trade, got a trade. And so Pickens is watching the market, guys asking to leave, teams agreeing, trading him in a draft class where the receiver pool is not particularly strong. I think that leads teams to have more interest in going after these trades and these veteran types. That's the concern about what happens with George Pickens, where he may not be a Steeler in 2025.
Right. And look, this is a guy, even though he's got a raise of up over $3 million as part of the proven performance escalator, he's looking at all these guys up over the $28 million mark, and he thinks he belongs there as well. And with 1 year left on the contract, that the Steelers are going to extend players. That's usually when they do it. There's been no sign that the Steelers have plans to extend him this offseason. And if they did, you'd have to think that he is looking at that DK number of $33 million at this point. 33 million per. And so it will be interesting to see how he reacts. Now, as we said, the last couple of weeks here, it would be in his best interest if, or at least my thoughts on this is if he doesn't get a deal this offseason, is just keep his nose clean as best as possible, go out and have the best season that you can, and then you have the potential of being the new the wide receiver prize in free agency a year from now. But how will he take all this? I mean, obviously, you look, best world scenarios to have both those guys on the field for the Steelers next year. Nobody's going to argue with that, right?
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah, that would be ideal. That's, I think, what Pittsburgh's hope is. But Mike Tomlin's whole volunteers, not hostages. If Pickens wants out, it may happen.
Right. So, some of this might rely on the market for George Pickens. Look, once again, I don't think you do anything. It's a fair question to ask right after the trade for DK Metcalf, but it becomes a fair question to ask if they go out there and add another reasonable addition to the room. I'm not talking about a Van Jefferson or something along those lines. Somebody that's legitimate, that can add 40, 50 catches to that room. And if they do that here once again in the next 24, 48, 72, 90, whatever hours or whatnot, then it really becomes a legitimate question: is what's the plan with George Pickens?
You have to imagine teams will call Pittsburgh about Pickens and say, hey, you guys should trade it for DK. Can we get Pickens? Is he now available? I imagine teams will be calling and checking in.
I would think so. Yeah, especially when you look at, Adams is off the market now. What's going to happen with Godwin in the Buccaneers? Mm-hmm. We're still waiting to see what's the outcome there. Where's Cooper Kupp going to go? You have a few others out there like Slayton that are still scheduled to be unrestricted free agents. Who else is going to be an unrestricted free agent here starting in the tampering period that we went down? Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Tyler Lockett obviously still out there, DeAndre Hopkins, but the list is, Marquise
Cooper
Brown,
Kupp likely to be cut, I'm going to
right?
guess.
Marquise Brown re-up with the Chiefs, so he's off the board. Josh Reynolds is going to be out there. So, but there's no, George Pickens can change your room, especially if you already got somebody in that room to go along with. So, long story short is, yeah, I would imagine, that the Steelers are getting a few calls.
Yeah, because he's a young receiver that's kind of in DK's situation. A young, in his prime receiver that can be a big play, like you said, change the room, change the feel of an offense in a positive way for what he does on the field and what his potential is. And so, yeah, I think teams will call. I'm getting ahead of ourselves, and obviously, no one knows for sure. It certainly could happen theoretically, but is there a world in which George Pickens is a Steeler in 2026 after his rookie contract expires? Could you re-sign Pickens to a big time deal and keep him long term, or is this going to be more likely or than not if he stays his final year in Pittsburgh?
I mean, obviously, when you talk about cash and cap and all, can it happen? Yes, you can always find a way to make it happen. Do I think that the Steelers would go that route right now? I mean, they 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 would surprise. I mean, it would be a surprise. Could they do it? Yes, they could do it. Am I expecting them to do it? No.
Agreed. That's where I'm at too. My standpoint was Pittsburgh would retain Pickens even before the Metcalf trade. They would retain Pickens, let the season play out, and go from there. It is hard to see him also get that long term deal for big money, given what they just did with Metcalf. So I'm sure Pickens is aware of that fact too, and we'll go from there. But that's certainly a scenario to watch. Again, I would love for Pickens to stay, even if it was for just one more season. And Pittsburgh doesn't franchise tag him; they don't extend him. He leaves, he gets paid. Pittsburgh gets a comp pick for a couple drafts from now because I want to see what this offense can do with Pickens, with Metcalf for at least the season. But again, will Pickens allow the team, quote unquote, to get that far, or will he try to strong arm his way out of Pittsburgh?
Well, once again, best case scenario is he stays. I mean, he's a damn good player. We've talked about that. And that offense with those two guys on the field really forced defenses to have to respect both of them. So we'll just sit and wait. We'll see how the rest of these cards fall, especially in the wide receiver room. Over the next several days, but I do think that if the Steelers do go out and add another reasonable name to this room, then that question really needs to be front and center where it comes to Pickens and whether or not he's still going to be on this roster past the draft.
Do you think Pittsburgh would actively look to trade away George Pickens, or would that world come where Pickens is asking to be traded?
It's hard to say, Alex. I mean, and would we, uh, unless we get a report that comes out, George Pickens is asked to be traded. Would we
Right.
ever know the truth there?
Well, I mean, we knew about DK asked to be
Yeah,
traded. I mean, I think we would hear that reporting if it came from Pickens.
right, yeah. I mean, is it plausible? It could go either way. It's very plausible. I mean, Pickens could look at this and look. This is a golden opportunity for me to catch some balls, get some touchdowns, and really increase my market value this season, and then get out of here.
Right. And Pickens may wonder, okay, who's the quarterback too? It didn't matter to Metcalf because he got paid, but Pickens, assuming there is no contract extension coming from him in the coming 24 hours, which safe to assume there won't be, he may look at it and say, maybe my decision to stay or not will be partially dictated by who's my quarterback. What if they re-sign Justin Fields, who didn't have the best connection and chemistry with a George Pickens? Would that influence his decision or likelihood of wanting out? If it's Russell Wilson or maybe Sam Darnold. I have no idea how he would feel about Sam Darnold, but that obviously could have an impact on his desires as well.
Right, right.
I
Well,
don't
I
think
mean, we'll
Pittsburgh.
get more clues here. I have a feeling over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think Pittsburgh would actively start shopping Pickens immediately. I think they would listen to calls. I think if Pickens asked out, we know the team's overall standpoint on that. They typically oblige, but I don't think they'd be actively shopping George Pickens.
Well, I mean, if you just sit back and let the phone ring.
Right. Like I said, I think they'll listen to calls for sure. And again, I think
Right,
teams are going to call because why would you not call seeing the scenario play out?
right.
So overall, massive news here on the eve of the legal tampering period. Pittsburgh landing DK Metcalf. Yeah, I mean, again, kudos to the front office for this, and it's been a frustrated fan base for the last couple of months. That's the real, to me, even more sinister part of the 5-game losing streak is you have to wallow in that for months. That's how your season ends. Of course, losing in the playoffs, no matter the circumstances, is always going to bring frustration, but to have that kind of collapse, you had to sit in it, hear about it every day since January, and now there's finally some good news to come in, and who knows what will happen the rest of the way. And obviously, you're not making these moves based off of vibes or, appeasing the fan base, but it is nice to have this move come in that helps kind of take the stench away from that 5-game losing streak they've been kind of just having to wallow in for 2.5 months.
Well, the way I started this, I mean, you talk about, change, and you talk about precedents and all like that. This is something, we said, we're looking to see if they do something that's kind of a stop the presses kind of move. And this is,
Mhm.
most definitely. And we'll see if they can continue to build this offense more. It will be interesting to see which way this quarterback position goes and whether or not they add another. My thought all along is that they were going to add 2 wide receivers to this room this offseason. Uh, you know, more than just the Van Jeffersons and the Scotty Millers and all like that. So they've got one in the room now. We'll see if they go out and get another one like a Slayton or a Lockett or one of those guys along those lines there. So at least they did this, and they did this prior to the legal tampering. They gave the fans something to get excited about before even
Mhm.
the legal tampering period. I mean, there's excitement in both of our voices, tonight,
Right.
because this is unheard of, really, kind of in not only recent, but the last 20-25 years of Steelers history when it comes to this kind of stuff, particularly.
I know this is obviously influenced by the cap going up, modern era, but this is the highest paid non-quarterback in history, or is this even the highest paid player? Did Ben ever average this type of money in his playing career?
I don't think he did. I think this is a if it's a 33. I mean, did Ben ever
E-
crack
Even
33
if it's
million?
30, even if we just assume
All right.
30 on the 5 years, 50, I don't know. I can check, but I was just catching myself because I was thinking, okay, highest paid non-quarterback, but obviously the quarterback salaries have skyrocketed. Ben's last, big money extension came many, many years ago.
Right.
Is this can we confirm that? Is this the highest paid
I
Steeler
I
in
would have to
franchise
go back and
history?
look. It seems like what Ben's like his height overall was like 28 million new money average.
I'm seeing this is from over the cap renegotiation in 2019, 2 years, 68 million, so 34 million per year. Does that
Yeah, but we don't know
sound right?
how much old money was on the deal, because
Yeah.
remember they termed this old money and new money.
Sure. But even just taking kind of a flat 5-year 50, 30 million, so maybe just call it, to be safe, second highest paid non-quarterback in franchise history.
History's gotten away from me on this. I'll have to research this.
Okay. But anyway, obviously it's huge money, a massive move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the compensation gets tamped down because of the massive contract Pittsburgh has to be part of this deal. The initial reporting was that Seattle wanted the first and the third. I think everyone understood that was never going to happen. I always thought, wherever DK Metcalf went, and I did not expect it to be Pittsburgh, he would go for about a second round pick, and that's essentially what he went for. Again, we'll check on the sixth, seventh round pick swap, but that's really just a footnote on this deal. So yeah, what a way to unofficially officially start the offseason.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, just from here, some more minor points. Talked about quarterback, kind of wrapped that up, wait and see mode there. Where to from here? Mentioned any other big free agency moves we did not mention? Devontae Adams signing with the Rams on a 2-year deal. He goes out west, which was consistent with reporting of what he wanted to do. A lot of re-signings, a lot of the inside linebacker market. A lot of those guys are staying in there with their current teams. Any other big kind of pre-free agency news we should note?
Oh, I'm trying to remember here real quick what all has transpired while I look up what the details of Ben's last contract was. I'm having trouble pulling it up right now, but I'll get
Harold
that.
if you yeah, just Harold. Just I'm reading off just a couple of notable signings. Harold Landry to the Patriots, 3 years, 43.5 million.
That's
Jamin,
obviously a link back to the head coach, from time in Tennessee. So that's not an huge surprise where he landed.
right, and Boston College alum, so it's all connected there. Aaron Jones re-signing with the Vikings. That's gonna probably make Najee Harris, I would say, the number one free agent running back. Maybe drive up the price tag a little
Right.
bit. It'll compete against a really good rookie class, of course, but that's still going to be good news for Najee Harris. How about Ronnie Stanley staying in Baltimore on a 3-year deal, massive money? Dan Moore Jr. is going to get paid a lot of money. I had some people saying, Alex, you're crazy. I had one guy on Twitter, he blocked me because I said Dan Moore's price tag went up. People are going to be shocked. Steeler fans that do not like Dan Moore, which is most of them, are going to be shocked by what he's going to get. But he is one of the top left tackles on the market, mid-20s, experienced. He is going to get paid, and people better be prepared for it.
Yeah. You pay the tax for being available come free agency. So he's a guy that normally stays healthy. So there's no reason to think that he won't get a nice contract out of this.
I think he's missed 2 games in his career. So those guys there's an O-line tax, as you said. There's a premium on the position. Now, of course, it's not a headline in Pittsburgh because more that writing was on the wall. He was leaving, but just to reiterate the point, and Broderick Jones shifting over to left tackle, where he'll face one Myles Garrett twice in 2025, Dave. And so Broderick Jones better be ready for that. Myles Garrett staying in Cleveland despite the trade request. And all it took, as my grandpa once said, Dave, $40 million can solve any problem in the world. Grandpa didn't say that, but it works for Garrett and Cleveland as they get a massive extension done to keep him a Cleveland Brown.
Money won't buy you happiness, but it will buy you a yacht big enough to pull up right alongside of it, as the great David Lee Roth once was quoted as saying there. Yeah, people can get happy real quick in the pants that they got mad in, depending on how much money is involved. And they got it worked out. And props to his agent, for doing that and getting him paid. Interesting way to go about doing it, releasing the kind of the press release, and then doubling down and saying, look, I'm not signing. I want out of here. And lo and behold, they make you the new highest paid defensive player in the league. That soothes things quite a bit. Makes you get happy real quick and be okay to play for an organization like the Browns.
For sure. Yeah, I don't think they're going to win anytime soon, but Garrett can at least look at his bank account and be happy about that. Now, that matters for Pittsburgh because you face Garrett still twice a season. Disappointing news for Steeler fans. But B, the impact on TJ Watt. And we'll probably talk about this more maybe later on in the offseason or later this week. We got so much free agency news. The Metcalf news, certainly the top story. I don't want to dwell on this, but Pittsburgh waited around to get Watt's deal done. They said they want to keep him in Pittsburgh. They want to extend TJ Watt. Well, that price tag has gone up with the Crosby deal in the Raiders in Las Vegas, with Garrett in Cleveland. I think this negotiation just got really tough between Pittsburgh and TJ Watt.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going to get done. By the way, Roethlisberger, $34 million new money average. I think was his highest back there in 2020-ish, right around in there. So if DK comes in at 33 million new money average, it would not exceed what Ben had.
But highest paid non-quarterback in franchise history.
Right.
Until the TJ Watt extension gets done.
Right. And okay, the byproduct of the whole Myles Garrett thing and Max Crosby thing at this point, all it is the meter's running, and the meter's running at a higher number right now. And especially unless the Steelers break precedent again and give fully guaranteed money past year one for a non-top of the market value type guy, then you have to think that TJ Watt's going to top whoever the top player is at the time come that time. So right now that player is Myles Garrett. But what's going to happen with Trey Hendrickson here soon? What's going to happen with Micah Parsons? Those are 2 key guys in this thing that we've talked about within here. Both those guys, Parsons and Trey Hendrickson, probably feel like they should both be topping Myles Garrett at this time. So how quickly can the Steelers get this deal done? We'll see. They obviously have the cash and the cap space to be able to do it. But it feels like 40 million is the new low bar as far as new money average goes when it comes to getting Watt paid. And just a few days ago, that was about what, $5 million lower.
Right, and it's funny because I had asked you basically that question, I think on the Friday show, I wanna say, the Wednesday or Friday show, what if the Browns and I said 41,000,000 if they gave, excuse me, Garrett that kinda deal, what happens to Watt then? Ends up being 40,000,000 for Garrett. So Pittsburgh can do one of two things: top Garrett's number and keep the precedent of guaranteed money past first year only for top of market deals and quarterbacks, or break that precedent, as you said, and try to go under that. And I don't know which way they're going to go because, I mean, I still want to keep TJ Watt. I know many people want to trade him. I still want to. Hey, I would love for Watt to retire a Steeler, but 40 plus million, that takes it to another level.
They're still going to do it.
So you think they are going to top Garrett's number?
I have no reason to think that they won't as we sit here today.
So 40 and a half. What if Parsons then tops it? Because I don't know if Hendrickson will. I think my guess is Hendrickson will come in above Crosby, below Garrett, but Parsons certainly could because he's younger.
Well, if you don't top it, if Watt doesn't top the Garrett number, I would imagine that most definitely the cash layout, the cash payments, as far as that goes through the first 3 years, most definitely will. But look, these guys are always about getting more than the next guy. And whatever that number ends up being come time for Watt to sign the deal, I expect him to end that night as the number one guy.
That's where I'm at too. I think Pittsburgh would rather do that and have to pay a little bit more than break that precedent. Because once you break that precedent for a non-top of market, then every other free agent till the end of time will be angling. Anytime any big money free agent will be looking for guaranteed money past year one, I think Pittsburgh would rather keep that precedent and have to pay a little extra for Watt. And you're right, it's hard to see Watt take less than Garrett because who's the one guy he's been compared to
Right.
throughout his entire career? It's Myles Garrett, drafted in the same class, play in the same division. There is this kind of rivalry, similar career arcs, both future Hall of Famers. A little bit of beef they had this year. Garrett won a DPOY and Watt wasn't happy with that. They both have a one-time award winner. Watt does not want to be second place to Garrett. Garrett once declared himself midseason number one in the world. TJ, you're number two. Watt does not want to be number two contractually, but that price tag just went up. And I don't want to harp on it because I just gave them a ton of credit, Pittsburgh, for landing DK Metcalf. But this is a deal we've been talking about for weeks now, Dave. They needed to get Watt done immediately. You could have given him $35 million, top Nick Bosa's number, same structure, had the deal done last month before Crosby's contract, before Garrett's contract, and been good to go. I think Watt would have done that. Yes, his camp could have been waiting things out, but I don't think Watt wanted to drag this thing out. Would have probably loved to get a deal done early, go into training camp, focus solely and fully on football, not anything else, not on contract. I think Pittsburgh dropped the ball here.
There's no other way to think about it, other than that, especially when they had that gap in time. I mean, look, you had since the season ended to beat everybody to the altar here, and you had the cash and the cap to do it. They didn't do it. And I know people are driving off the road again with us talking about paying a guy like if they were already mad about potentially paying him 36 and a half or whatever million a couple of days ago, they must really be driving off the road talking about 40, 41, 42 million dollars new money average. But I'm sorry, I understand the pushback on that. I really do. I hope I conveyed that enough in our last podcast talking about that after the Crosby deal was done. But there's no reason to think that that's not going to be the finality to this.
So when does this get done? I know nobody knows the answer to it.
I don't know. I mean, it could get done right after here. It could get done right after the first of the year here. I mean, how long are you going to let DK Metcalf sit in that top spot?
Sure. But I think the deal did get tougher today. And so does that drag this thing out longer? What if it goes into training camp? Is there another hold-in coming? People kind of forget TJ Watt held in that
I think it's
entire.
possible, especially if
I
you
think,
know a deal's coming.
yeah, I think it's a little less likely than last time, but it's certainly possible. And I know Watt does not want to do that, but you got to do what you got to do. So hopefully it does not get to that point. I mean, I think if I had to guess, and I'm just guessing, I think the latest would be June. They would try to get something done, but hopefully it is sooner because Parsons could get paid at any moment. Hendrickson could get traded and paid at any moment. And I just think Pittsburgh is literally paying the price by waiting.
All right, we got a lot of time to think and talk about it. That's for sure.
Yep. Any other thoughts here, Dave, on a crazy pre-free agency? Again, Metcalf leading the news cycle. Anything else?
No, just some funny stuff out there from some players' reaction to Twitter. Ben's got his number 7 helmet back on. Funny little IG post of, following the DK Metcalf signing. Chris Boswell going on IG, showing a picture of him throwing a pass, saying, "I know DK and GP down there somewhere." Those kind of things. Once again, this is. This is a cataclysmic stop the presses kind of move for the team with DK Metcalf here, and it gives you at least more than enough to get excited about here at the start of free agency. And I've said all along they're going to have to do a lot, especially on the offensive side of football, to get me in a position where I think they can compete in this thing, and this is a step in the right direction at least.
Sure. No, I totally understand that overall. I just lost my train of thought here looking at my phone. Oh yeah, it was Pat Frymuth in Ireland, right? He's having
Right.
it's a good place to be to celebrate the news.
Yeah, got a first-hand response from him with some looks like Steeler fans there in a bar somewhere in Ireland upon learning about the DK Metcalf news. So, all right, you're going to climb into the film. You're going to have a full breakdown of DK Metcalf here pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have something up for the morning. That's my goal. So we'll break away here for that. Just one last question for you, Dave. What jersey number will DK Metcalf wear? We're in 14 like George Pickens.
Yeah, maybe put those two in a room, see who comes out with it.
They probably would scrap for it. What did DK wear at Ole Miss? What number did he have? He had 14 at Ole Miss too. So I think he would love to keep 14, but I don't think Pickens would like that. But I think Metcalf getting paid $30 million may convince him to wear a different number. Although Pittsburgh's whole don't wear digit numbers. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting one to watch. It's not a big story, but I'm curious how that all gets sorted out.
Yeah, let's get past. Let's worry about that in a future podcast here. But good news overall. Good way to end this thing. All right, you and I'll be back when we get back. Who knows? Maybe more news breaks tonight. Maybe big news breaks tomorrow. We have to get on and do another one of these. But in the meantime, follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. I imagine we'll get a lot of hate mail for even throwing out the idea of what's going to happen with George Pickens, but I think we have explained ourselves enough of why that could be a legitimate question to ask, especially here in the next 48 or so hours here. We'll get a lot of pushback on that. We'll get a lot of pushback, I'm sure, on TJ Watt and what he's worth and not worth. We'll find out who the quarterback is here before too long. And we'll talk about it. So you can make a donation going to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. So great job, Alex. Great work on the site today. Ross McCorkle and the guys doing a great job getting caught up with all the content on this busy Sunday night, and the tampering period starting tomorrow afternoon will give us plenty to talk about. So until next time, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.